Hi guys.
Hey, Marco.
Hey.
Welcome to a very special episode, very special bonus episode of the podcast where we're going to talk about the new Batman trailer because
Yes,
I
we
flexed a lot of my Aaron Sorkin Star Trek knowledge, but I have not got a chance to flex my Batman knowledge yet in 3 episodes, so I'm very excited to talk about this. I'm joined, as per usual, by Dan and Karolina, who are both here. So we're gonna try to keep this one kind of brief. So let's talk about it. One of you guys can start. Let me know what you think, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, Carolina, you were saying you had a lot of questions, so why don't you? Do you want to begin?
Yeah. So the Batman. I'm on the IMDb right now, and it just says the plot is unknown. But earlier I was telling Dan that I watched the trailer and didn't actually know who the villains were until I went on IMDb.
Right.
I did guess it was the Riddler, but I didn't actually know. Just based on, I don't remember what part of the trailer. I mean, I just rewatched it, and of course I already forget. But I think he said he wanted to play a game or something, and I'm like, okay, it's not the Joker again. It has to be the Riddler, and that's all I knew. Otherwise, I don't really know the plot. I'm excited to see Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman because I love her, and otherwise, I have no idea what's going on. And I don't really know anything about the other villain, the Penguin. Like, I saw the old Batman that had the Penguin, but I don't know anything else other than that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, this will be interesting.
Yeah. You guys know a lot more than I do, obviously.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think I've mentioned this to you before, but I just really wanted to stress how excited I am for it's clearly going for a more untamed, uncontrolled first stages Batman, which is it's obvious because that famous scene in the trailer where he's just beating on the dude. I
did not like those sound effects. That was horrible. It was just cracking bones and ugh.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah.
That's why I loved it. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that the most, seeing that progression into the controlled, has everything under control. I mean, the Batman that we're used to, but we'll get there, And that was my first thought really after I first saw the trailer.
Yeah.
Do we know if this is going to be multiple movies?
Yes, this Batman series is going to be at minimum a trilogy of movies, starring Robert Pattinson, obviously. There's also going to be a TV show on HBO Max about the Gotham City Police Department that's going to tie in to the show to flesh out some of the villains and stuff. So I guess my general thoughts seeing it was that I'm very excited to get detective Batman, because I feel none of the every Batman movie has basically been the same, in so much as it's just a crazy person who's has a lot of trauma from the death of his parents or whatever, but it's not really indicative. We've talked a lot about this, every Batman movie is basically just an adaptation of Year One or The Dark Knight Returns. And the reason that is because those are probably the 2 most famous Batman books, but they're also 2 really specific ones. Year One is his origin, Dark Knight Returns is an old man Batman on his last hurrah or whatever. And they're the best and they're the most famous ones, but if you go pick up a Batman comic, it doesn't feel like those books at all. Batman comics have a totally different tone. They're very much episodes of Sherlock, but in the Batman universe. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited that we're gonna get some more comic bookiness, because obviously the Christopher Nolan movies are great, but as great as they are, something I've always complained a lot about is the fact that they lose a little bit of the Gotham not being a real city, and some of the weird more gothic sides of it. And the Tim Burton movies don't age amazingly, but a part of them that does age really, really well is just that feel of oh, this isn't an actual city. It's a really specific thing, and Gotham really feels like something specific. It doesn't just feel like they filmed in Chicago, because Christopher Nolan just filmed everything in Chicago. So that's I'm excited for that blend. To me, this looks like a blend of that, of taking the subject matter as seriously as Nolan, but we're gonna get some more weird shit. which really excites me. Now, Carol, you were mentioning about the plot, and this is something I kind of want to talk about here.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they're using the Riddler, because in the past, like, I'd say about 5 to 7 years, there's been like 2 really, really famous Riddler stories that both take place in like an early Batman career.
Yeah.
And it looks like this movie is like taking from a little bit of both of those. So the first one I'm going to talk about is called Batman Earth 1, and it's this comic run that is supposed to be like, what if Batman took place in like the current era? And the Riddler story in that is kind of what you're seeing here. Like, he takes hostages, and he's kind of like a terrorist almost, and he like threatens to kill people. And it's like a detective story, and the costume, Batman's costume in this, from what I've seen from the trailer, is also really reminiscent of that. It looks very like built from other stuff and armored. So that's like a cool starting point, because it's more of a modern comic that's really helped to like redefine Batman in a lot of ways as like a detective. The other cool one that they're kind of referencing a little bit is this famous run called 0 Year. That is, so basically, like, okay, this is a whole comic thing, but like in the early 2000s, they kind of like rebooted. They reboot comics every like 10 years, and they bring on like new creative teams. Yeah, DC. So in the actually in the early 2010s, like in 2011, they rebooted it with this initiative called the New 52. Doesn't matter, we don't have to get into it. But there was this really famous creative team on it who's now done, like, it's like a seminal run. It's like the seminal modern run of Batman. It was written by Scott Snyder, drawn by Greg Capullo. It's like the run of Batman for the current era. And in that run, they did like an origin story called 0 Year. And in that origin story, again, it's another Riddler story of Riddler kind of like taking Gotham hostage. So it looks like we're getting themes of both of those. Like, I'd say the look looks a lot like Batman Earth 1. I'd say even like the Riddler himself looks a lot like Batman Earth 1 in terms of like his actions. But there's a lot of cool like imagery from the trailer that looks right out of 0 Year. So like everything about his motorcycle, we've seen stills with him on the motorcycle and his weird like motorcycle suit. And you see him in the trailer at one point, like he's got the weird leather jacket or whatever. Like that whole thing is very much like page for page taken from 0 Year. Like, it's very similar. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited that we're referencing comics that aren't just the goddamn Dark Knight Returns and Batman Begins. It's like, not just the Batman Year One. It's like, yeah, it's like cool. Like, you're a Batman fan. Like, you like understand like more history of the character. Now, another thing, and this will be kind of my last main point I want to mention, and then we can maybe get into more like general questions about this trailer specifically. But another thing I want to mention from a comics perspective is something cool that they're doing that I really, really like is that they're introducing a lot of, like, they're really building the world of Gotham in terms of like the villains. So another thing that I really loved about the Tim Burton movies was, like, in the first Tim Burton movie, like, Harvey Dent is just there. But, like, he doesn't turn into Two-Face or anything, but, like, he's just a character in the movie. And, like, if you're a fan, you know, oh, like, maybe down the line we'll get him turning into Two-Face, which that all goes to shit in those movies. Because they recast him as a white guy, and it's really weird. Anyway, but what I like about this is it's referencing another kind of really, really famous comic called, well, kind of two. So one of them is called Batman the Long Halloween. The other one's called Batman Hush. Both were written by the same guy, I believe. Batman the Long Halloween is cool because it's this story where, like, every month like has a holiday, and on that holiday and every month someone basically gets murdered. And so it's basically a detective story. But one of the cool things about it was it's supposed to take place in Batman's like second year on the job, kind of, which is when this movie's supposed to take place, like they've said in press. And it was kind of your initial look at a lot of villains. So it was Batman's first run-in with all these different villains. And one of the cool things about this trailer is, like, Catwoman's in the trailer. And, like, she's probably not going to be a major character, but, like, they cast Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. I'm sure she's going to be in the whole trilogy as just, like, an ongoing thing. Like, Carol, you mentioned Penguin is in this, played by Colin Farrell, which, like, is insane because he looks so different in the trailer.
I was looking at the picture of him, and then it said Colin Farrell as the Penguin, and I was like, that's not him. You're kidding.
It is, though.
That's insane.
But that's cool, too, because that's another, like, comic thing of a lot of times the Penguin is just, like he runs a club or whatever, but, like, he may not be the main antagonist. Yeah. He's just, like, another shitty gangster dude in Gotham. So it looks like we're referencing a lot of that in terms of it's like a mystery, and also there's like villains everywhere. And then the Batman Hush reference in specific is really interesting. So in this trailer, we see a lot of imagery of like people getting their face taped up.
Yep.
Hush was this like, it was this run that they did where he was I don't want to spoil like the actual story, but it was this whole thing of like who is Hush, and Hush is this villain that has his face taped up. So I'm wondering if if this is all a misdirect. Like if it is the Riddler, but low key, like Hush is involved somewhere as well. And I don't want to spoil who Hush is, because if that is the case, like it'll be a cool plot twist in the movie. And you guys, I don't think, know the plot twist, so I don't want to like. And it's not just like spoil it for listeners. I don't want to spoil it for you guys either. It's cool.
Thank you.
I'm familiar with Hush and some of the Long Halloween.
Yeah.
Not the end of the Long Halloween, but
it's so I really like this. And another thing about Hush that's kind of referenced is Hush is really where we get the first like modern Batman and Catwoman being together, like in a relationship in a serious way. It really kind of like built it, and like in that comic she finds out that he's Bruce Wayne, and like it's, you know, so it really looks like if I had to say like the 4 things it looks like it's referencing the most is all like still in the top 10 of like if you were to go online and look up the top 10 Batman comics, but it's not the ones that we've seen a lot of. Like it's really deliberately like the more like typical Batman story style, where it's like a detective story and all that. So that's my comic knowledge dump in terms of just like references to stuff and like potentially where the plot may be going. I'm assuming the Riddler is going to be taking people hostages or whatever. I have a feeling that there may be some reference to Hush in there, which kind of ties to Bruce Wayne's past. And I'm really excited. It looks like Matt Reeves, who's directing this, really cares. And his last franchise before this is Planet of the Apes, and he like painstakingly cared to make references to the originals. Like, and as a fan of the originals, I was like, okay, like this guy,
but without sacrificing like
quality
writing. Yeah,
100%. So that's my general comic knowledge dump. We can talk about the trailer a bit more specifically. One thing I do want to mention, I wanted to get your guys' take on the suit. For me, I'm not the biggest fan of the suit, but I've also heard that he's most likely going to end up like getting a new suit by the end of the movie. Like this suit, this is his like, you know, quote unquote homemade like first suit, and then he'll get a more traditional one by the end of the movie. So it is what it is. That's good. What do you guys think about like seeing him in action as Batman for the first time?
I think it's very interesting that they didn't include a lot of him talking. I am very intrigued to see what he sounds like, because I have seen him do some good accents and I've seen him do some bad accents. So I hope that his accent doesn't ruin this film for me and others. But I mean, if they've so painstakingly, apparently, Marco, you said, chosen like the plot and the characters and stuff, like I hope that the director knows what he's doing, and that he will not sound dumb like he did in The King. But
oh my god. To be fair though, he was doing a French accent in The King, not an American accent, but still it was ridiculous.
Still, like, nailing an accent is a talent, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my one thing.
That's fair.
I've not seen The King. I don't think I can say I've seen any movie with Robert Pattinson except for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
I was just going to say Harry Potter. Well, he hasn't seen Twilight yet.
What about The Lighthouse?
Yeah. No, I wanted to see The Lighthouse. I never did, though.
Guys, we got to do an episode on that.
Yeah.
We're doing an episode on that.
Yes.
We have to.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I intend to watch that movie anyway, so.
Perfect.
So Carol, you mentioned like his bat voice and like what that's gonna sound like. Really, the only glimpse we get of it in the trailer is him saying like "I'm vengeance" after he like destroys the guy. Yeah. Now, I want to point this out. This is a really specific nerdy thing, but stick with me here.
God, of course, okay.
So obviously, I'm watching this trailer for the first time. You know what I mean? I'm hanging out with Madison. It's nighttime. Suddenly, I get a notification. Batman trailer's out. I'm like, okay, here we fucking go. So I put this trailer on. I'm watching. The guy in the Joker makeup says, "Who are you?" And I just kind of rolled my eyes, and I'm like, oh my god, yeah. He's gonna say I'm Batman. We have to have the I'm Batman moment in the
the
trailer.
same with me.
And then he says, "I'm vengeance," and I was like, okay, fine. But then I realized, so like up until now, the definitive take on Batman, I'm gonna say, and I would say most Batman fans would agree, is actually the Batman the Animated Series from like the 90s and 2000s, with like Kevin Conroy doing the voice of Batman. That is like, everyone agrees that's like the definitive take, because it is like the serious storytelling mixed with like the world building or whatever. And what's interesting is that take, like the I'm Batman, because like every Batman has an I'm Batman moment. I don't know why. I think Michael Keaton like started it by accident, and now it's just become a thing that every Batman has to say it. But that take has a very specific one where he doesn't just say I'm Batman, he says I am vengeance, I am the night, I'm Batman. And so when I saw that I'm vengeance thing in the trailer, I'm wondering if like, I mean, it's a cool trailer moment, but if also like in the final cut of the movie, if we're actually going to get that full like mini like speech from him of like, and actually referencing Batman the Animated Series, of like not just saying I'm vengeance, but actually going through that whole thing and doing it. Which is like a really small geeky thing, but if they do that, that'll be like such a nice way to subvert like just the casual Batman fans who are expecting an I'm Batman moment, but also then for like people like me to be like, oh cool, you're referencing like inarguably the best piece of Batman media like ever outside of comics. So that's gonna be fun and interesting. And like in that one moment, which is really the only time we hear his Bat voice, I was like, okay, it sounds, I don't know, it doesn't sound as like crazy as Christian Bale. It sounds closer to Michael Keaton than anything, which like was great for me. It's just like a more hushed, just like understated type thing. So
yeah. Also, can we talk about the people in the Joker makeup?
Yeah.
And how we think that might connect to like the story?
I don't have any ideas. I mean, Marco mentioned that like it already seems like they're just including like so many bad guys in it that maybe it won't play a big role, but I mean, I don't know as much Batman lore as either of you, and especially Marco.
The only thing that sticks out to me with that is in Batman Beyond, which is like the sequel for to give everyone context, it's like the sequel animated series to Batman the Animated Series with like that same Batman as an old guy. And there's like a new young Batman that takes over. But in that, there is like a Joker gang. Like the idea is like the Joker's gone, we don't know why. We do end up finding out later. And there's like a Joker gang in Gotham. And like that reminded me a lot of that. But like the Joker gang is kind of predicated on there being a Joker, and I'm pretty sure we have confirmation that like I think they said in one of the panels or whatever, like this movie is not gonna have the Joker in it. So I'm
that's good.
I'm curious to see.
Yeah, the Joker's kind of been over.
Yeah, like how that ties in. I don't know. So.
Well, we'll see. Also, like, do we ever see? Because Paul Dano is the Riddler. First of all, I love Paul Dano. I don't know anything about Batman, but I like to think I know a lot about actors, and so I'm very excited with all the people that they cast, first of all. Yeah. But Paul Dano as the Riddler, he's portrayed as, like, really, like, dark and, like, in the comics and, like, in the old films that the Riddler has been in. Like, he's always wearing this, like, bright green and purple outfit. But is there, like, a comic where we see a dark Riddler, or was this just, like, an artistic choice?
It's funny, like, I would say, and Dan can probably attest to this, too, that I would assume they're going probably closest to like what was in the Batman Arkham games in term, like that'll probably be the Riddler's final look.
I was gonna say that if you weren't gonna mention that.
Yeah, we'll go for it. Like you can talk about it a little bit too. We both played those games a lot, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's mainly what I was gonna bring up. But like, yeah, in those games, he's a much more like, I don't want to say edgy because
yeah,
like in comic book movies that has like a really negative, like you know that doesn't mean much anymore. But it's actually really cool how he's portrayed in the Arkham games. It's very mysterious and very like he's not just. It's not like in the Batman 66 show where he's just like he's making riddles to like have fun because like that's what he does, right? But in the games he's like actually facilitating terrorism through his riddles. Yeah,
that's gonna be an interesting thing to see how that plays out. Because I don't know what his look is going to look like, and I don't know if they're going to completely... Look, I mean, I think, just based on what we've seen, based on the stuff Matt Reeves has talked about, I would assume we're going to get something a bit closer to normal Riddler than just, like, a random nothing costume. I think it'll probably look more like the Batman Arkham games, if, like, people want to reference that. I don't know. And I guess the other thing too, right, is it's one of those things where like everything seems like it doesn't work in live action until it does. So like obviously like our only live action thing outside of the Batman 66 show is like Jim Carrey from Batman Forever, which was basically just the 66 show. It's just a joke. But at the same time, you look at something like, look, if you think about the Shazam costume, like if you were gonna, like if 5 years ago you were like, yeah, they're gonna make a Shazam movie and the costume is gonna be like a 1-for-1, I'd be like, well, that can't work. What are you talking about? But then you see it in the context of the movie and it's like, yeah, it works fine. So I would assume we're probably gonna get like a Batman Arkham game costume, which still will have like some of the greens and some of that stuff, but is more like muted, and obviously Paul Dano isn't gonna play him ridiculous. He's gonna play him like a terrorist. So it'll probably come together in that way.
Yeah, and one note I also have about the actual costume is they seem to be giving him goggles again, which I think was a thing from the games, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Which I like a lot. I like that look for the Riddler.
Me too.
A lot. Or sorry, not goggles, glasses. Anyway.
Yeah, like the eye coverings. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I was going through photos to look for goggles, so I did not know what he was talking about.
I have the trailer playing back, so I just passed that part.
I'm
and
just
corrected
looking at
myself.
stills on IMDb.
Oh, yeah, so something I was going to say, and this is more of just like general, I guess, about the tone it looks like. First of all, for the trailer, combining like the Nirvana song also with the score of, like, if you guys remember, they did that first reveal trailer where like Robert Pattinson just like walks out in the bat suit and there's just like the score behind it and it was like 45 seconds long. They did that like 6 months ago, I want to say. And that was like the first taste of the score for the movie. And like I really loved like taking the trailer, but then
I actually don't think I ever saw that one.
So watch it, and the only reason I'm going to say watch it is because once you watched it and like you watch this trailer again, you can actually hear the score like that it's like put underneath of the Nirvana song, and it's a really cool sound mix. And I guess this goes to say like this is a really great trailer, like not just the sound mix, but even just I'm really loving the use of like the red and black theme for Batman, and the animated series,
me too.
yeah, and Batman Beyond both had like really like red and black vibes for Batman. We haven't seen that in live action, and the whole thing just comes together great.
It's funny you were talking about the music though, and I think once I do go watch that little 45-second thing that you talked about, I will appreciate it more, because my one complaint with the trailer is I felt that the music choice was dated.
Sure.
But now that you mentioned that it's like the Nirvana song, like I don't know much about Nirvana, so now that you're mentioning that it's the song mixed with like the actual score,
yeah,
I think I'd probably appreciate it more once I see that other clip.
Yeah, for me, that's what really makes it like not just a pop song, because like pop songs and movie trailers have become such a thing now, but to have it actually mixed with the score in that way, I was like, oh, cool. That's cool. Like, I respect that. It's like a creative decision. It's not just like Batman's dark and Nirvana's dark, so let's just put it's like...
that could be cool.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, guys, I'm wondering, at the end of the trailer, we get half of a date, but two of the characters of the date are question marks, right?
Yep.
Do you have any theories of when this is going to be coming out?
Yeah, 30-31.
Okay. So not far off.
Yeah, I think they're both supposed to be twos, but I like that they were question marks because, like, we are living in this very unknown time. But no, IMDb even says 2021. Although they aren't done filming, so, like, we'll see.
Yeah, that's another thing worth mentioning is, like, this trailer was only put together on 25% of shot, like, footage.
Yeah.
Like, they've only shot 25% of the movie as of the making of this trailer, so... That's pretty, like, it's a really solid trailer for not even having a lot.
They must have shot some pivotal moments.
Yeah.
So, I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is, like, we talked about the suit, but not about the bat symbol being made out of pieces of Joe Chill's gun. So, for context, Joe Chill murdered Bruce Wayne's parents with a gun. He shot them.
Yeah.
And apparently... the symbol of the bat suit for this suit that we've seen is fragments of that gun. And that was like Marco, when we were talking about this before we got any trailer or whatever, we were like, that was our biggest complaint. We're like, oh, it's going down this super edgy road and it's trying way too hard. And I still I'm sure that'll work better in the whole movie. I still, you know, prefer if it wasn't literally pieces of a gun making up the bat symbol, but that's definitely my biggest complaint for the suit. And like the cowl is okay, it's not my favorite one. I think like I like the ears, but like the bottom part is a little too open for my taste for a Batman mask. I don't know, I just wanted to mention that because that's been a talked about thing.
How did he even get the gun to make the suit?
That's why it doesn't make sense. That's why it doesn't make sense. That's why it's kind of silly. And also,
well, I thought, didn't he like break into the evidence like room at the GCPD and steal it at some point, or is that a different story?
So there's like, yeah. So like we talked about this a little bit, but I think here's where this whole idea came from. Just to give a little bit of, so in that famous Batman story, The Dark Knight Returns. In order to explain why Batman has like a yellow symbol on his chest when the rest of his suit is so dark, they have a scene where he gets shot there, and his internal monologue says like, it was too heavy to always wear armor, so I have a little plate underneath this yellow thing on my suit, and like that yellow thing is like a target, so when I jump out at people they'll try to shoot there, but that's my most reinforced spot. Then recently in like there was this thing like Detective Comics number 1000 came out. Detective Comics is obviously the comic where Batman started. So they did this special thing of like getting all these famous Batman creators in to tell stories. And in one of those stories, written by Kevin Smith, famous movie director, famous Batman fan, he kind of takes that idea of the metal plate, and he said that, well, that metal plate was actually like the gun that killed his family, like melted down. Which like is dumb, but also it's Batman 1000 or Detective Comics 1000. I get it. It's like all about the heritage of Batman, whatever. And it looks like this movie's taking it even more literal, where the symbol itself is made from the gun. We'll see what happens with it. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping that's just a total, like...
What I'm hoping is it's part of the character where, like, Bruce Wayne is being really overdramatic on purpose as part of his, like, character arc. And that ties into getting a new suit.
Right.
You know, by the end of the movie. Which is, it's probably what's going to happen.
For sure. That's, like, the best case scenario. Something we've talked a lot about, like going to Batman's origin, or at least like I've talked about. I prefer the idea that Joe Chill isn't a real person. Like I've always kind of in my own headcanon, and I don't know if there's ever been a story like this. I've liked the idea that, you know, young Bruce Wayne finds out the guy who's killed his parents' name was Joe Chill, but then ultimately he gets older and he finds out that like, nah, Joe Chill is just like John Smith. Like we don't know who did it. Like it's just some guy, like quote unquote Joe Chill. Because to me, it really it like helps cement the idea of like he goes out every night because like any bad guy could be Joe Chill. It's not about this one specific guy of like this guy killed.
Yeah, it's like Gotham City killed his parents.
Like Gotham.
Like they died on Crime Alley.
Yes.
Literally the most generic. Yeah, so I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So, and listen, maybe that's what this is about. Like maybe maybe there's a plot in the movie of him getting this gun that he thinks is from Joe Chill or whatever, and then ultimately it comes out, like, maybe Alfred tells him, or Commissioner Gordon is like, stop being a fucking weirdo. Like, there is no Joe Chill. Like, what are you talking about? We don't know. It was just some guy. Just some guy killed your parents. Like, pull it together. Like, that would be another, like, best case scenario of it. Of him being like, oh, I have to stop being weird. Like, I have to be, like, just... I have to use my smarts and my cleverness and not rely so much on being, like, a freak.
Yeah, and again, I'm hoping that's actually that it is what happens, because that would be a great turn for the that would make for a great story, I think.
Yeah, me too. A few more things we can quickly touch on. Jeffrey Wright, I think is his name, playing Commissioner Gordon. He looks great.
Oh yeah.
As soon as he started doing,
he seems like a Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, as soon as he started doing his voiceover, I was like, yep, like that perfect, like Commissioner Gordon. And then also, like, this is such a small thing, but I just love, like, Commissioner Gordon and Batman just, like, standing at a crime scene, like, trying to figure something out together. It's just such a comic book thing, and, like, there's always this, like, manufactured tension in the movies of, like, we have to hunt Batman, and I just love that, again, like, we're leaning more into, like, detective Batman instead of outsider Batman, and it's like, hey, come help, yeah, sure, come help us, like, smartest man ever, like, this is great, thank you, for, like... The 66 TV show takes it way too far, where the police department just doesn't try. They're just like, yep, just call Batman every time. You just gotta call. But I like the idea that they can like work together and have a relationship. That's a nice thing to see in the film. So
Also, one other thing that's a fun tie-in specifically to our pod, we have Gollum playing Alfred.
yes.
Gotta love
Wait,
that.
do we actually? Is that in the trailer?
Yeah, Andy
just on
Serkis. Yeah.
IMDb.
I didn't even see that.
That's
great.
There's a line about like you're becoming quite a celebrity or whatever, and that's Andy Serkis, and he's playing Alfred.
We didn't see him in the trailer though, did we? It was just his voice.
No, you just get the voiceover.
Oh, okay, that explains
Yeah,
why I missed it.
you
Then.
didn't-
That's cool
You
though.
didn't recognize his voice, Dan?
I thought the Gollum voice is his real voice.
Can you imagine?
That'd be great.
Anyway, that's cool though.
Yeah. There was one other...
One would argue that's more of a Lord of the Rings tie-in rather than a feature-length
No.
podcast tie-in.
It's a feature-length podcast.
It's a
tie-in.
feature-length podcast.
The people listening to this are fans of the
Um,
pod, not necessarily Lord of the Rings.
True. That is true.
Or maybe Batman. I don't know. I don't know where these people are coming from.
Is there anything else you want to touch on with the trailer? Any final things? I think we hit all the main points.
Yeah, I think I said all the stuff that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, I think all my questions are answered.
Good. Yeah, I'm maybe we can say like what level of excited we are. I don't know. I wasn't excited going into it because a lot of the stuff I heard just seemed like more of the same. But now seeing the trailer, it excites me that like every reference in it is from a famous Batman comic that isn't one of the two we've had references to, like really specific ones. I like that we're referencing animated series, and I just like a lot of the cool attention to detail stuff that Batman fans have talked about forever that never comes up. Like even at the end of the trailer when he takes his mask off and still got the like the eyeshadow, because
Yeah.
yeah,
thanks for bringing that up too.
Yeah, because in Batman Returns, which is like one of the Michael Keaton ones, there's a scene where like he's got the eyeshadow and the mask and he takes it off and just like the eyeshadow disappears, and it's like it was like such a joke in like the Batman lore. Like every Batman fan knows this, and everyone's like, oh yeah, remember that dumb scene? So I don't know, it's just like small attention to detail stuff like that like really makes me excited. Also, the Batmobile looks really cool because it's not like we went through this whole phase of it being like a tank, and now it just looks like a modern version of the 1960s one, and I love it.
I agree.
So,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the film. I mean, obviously, I haven't read any of the comics, so I'm not like a Batman like stan per se. But I did really enjoy the Dark Knight trilogy and love to laugh at some of the earlier ones. So I'm excited in that way. And now learning everything about the comics, at least what we think will be incorporated in this film, I'm also just excited for like genuine fans of the comics to watch the film, so it should be good, hopefully.
Very excited.
All right, thanks for recording this with me, guys. Thanks for letting me yell about Batman. It's one of my favorite things to do.
It had to happen
Nice
eventually.
little bonus episode. Yeah, it will happen more as we go. It just so happens we've been talking about like real films, so I've had to yell about like Aaron Sorkin. But eventually we'll get into more nerdy stuff, and I will yell about Batman more. So don't worry. Thanks for joining me, guys. Everyone, thanks for listening. Yeah, I think that's it. Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.